When David turned 65, he began to notice something unsettling. Friends he'd grown up with, men who once played tennis on weekends or laughed late into the night, were slowly fading. One was struggling with heart issues, another with early signs of dementia, and a third could barely walk without support. David wasn't sick, but he felt the looming question. What made the difference between aging well and simply aging? Then came a lecture he almost skipped, an aging seminar at his local library. The speaker, a soft-spoken woman in her 70s named Eleanor, didn't sell pills or preach miracles. Instead, she talked about mornings. The first hour after waking, she said, is your body's reset button. What you do in that hour can speed up aging, or slow it down. David listened, curious but skeptical. Still, something about her calm certainty stayed with him. That night, he sat in bed, reflecting. What did he really do each morning? Hit, snooze twice, scroll through news on his phone, drink coffee on an empty stomach. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt energized in the morning or truly awake. Could such small things make such a big difference? The next morning, he tried something different. He drank water first. He opened the curtains and stood in the sunlight for 5 minutes. He stretched, slowly, gently. He didn't expect a miracle, but the simplicity felt good, quiet, grounding, and that was enough to keep going. Now, at 93, David walks unaided, tends his vegetable garden every week, and still drives to the bookstore once a month to buy a new novel. People ask him how he does it. His answer is always the same. It's the mornings. I changed my mornings. This isn't about perfection or rigid routines. It's about intention. The choices we make in the quiet minutes after waking shape the rhythm of our day and our years. When those choices are nurturing, our bodies respond in kind. Science supports it, and so do countless stories from people like David. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore 7 simple but powerful morning habits practiced by people who age with strength, clarity, and joy. None of them are time-consuming or difficult. All of them, when done regularly, can become the foundation of a healthier, longer life. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to start living better, let David's story be your answer. It's never too late to begin again, starting tomorrow morning. David had never paid much attention to water. Like many people, he considered hydration something that happened naturally, by sipping tea, grabbing a soda, or having a glass of water sometime during lunch. Mornings, in particular, began with the familiar scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen and the habitual rustling of the newspaper. But that changed after Eleanor's seminar, when she shared one statistic that stayed lodged in his mind. By the time you wake up, your body is already dehydrated, and your blood is thicker than it should be. It sounded dramatic, but that evening, David looked it up and found studies backing it. Overnight, we lose water through breathing and perspiration, even when we sleep motionless. By morning, our organs are parched. Blood flow slows. The heart must work harder. The kidneys strain. And if the first thing you consume is caffeine, the dehydration only deepens. That knowledge unsettled him. Quietly, he placed a full glass of water on his nightstand, thinking, "It's worth a try." The next morning, before his feet touched the floor, he reached for the glass and drank. The water was room temperature and unremarkable, but somehow it felt like a small act of care. He sat for a few moments, letting the quiet settle around him, and noticed something subtle. His head was a little clearer, his body a little lighter. Over time, the ritual grew into something sacred. Before anything else, no phone, No coffee, no distractions. He drank water. On some mornings, it felt routine. On others, rejuvenating. But the difference was in the long game. Within a few weeks, David noticed that his morning fog had lifted. His energy levels were more stable, and his blood pressure, always borderline, had dropped a few points. At his next checkup, his doctor remarked, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." His friend Margaret, however, wasn't convinced. At 72, she had been battling fatigue and chronic kidney issues. Doctors were discussing dialysis. David encouraged her to try the water habit. Skeptical but desperate, she did. 60 days later, her lab results had improved significantly. "What are you taking?" her nephrologist asked. "Just water," she replied, smiling. It was so simple, yet transformative. Now David shares this small wisdom with anyone who will listen. "Your body has been working all night," he says gently. "The least you can do is give it a drink." It's not magic, it's biology. And sometimes, the most powerful changes begin with the simplest acts, like a single glass of water greeting the dawn. When David first began reshaping his mornings, he was surprised by how much the smallest things seemed to matter. Drinking water felt good, but it was what came next that truly changed his mornings, and, as he would later admit, his nights. It started with a simple suggestion Eleanor had made during her talk. Step outside. Within 30 minutes of waking, expose your eyes and skin to natural light. Even 5 minutes will change how your body functions throughout the day. First, it felt like an odd request. What could light really do? But David remembered Eleanor's explanation. Light sets the body's internal clock, your circadian rhythm, which governs everything from energy levels to hormone production. Without that signal, the brain drifts into confusion. Sleep suffers. Focus wanes. Metabolism slows. And aging, invisibly and persistently, accelerates. That first morning, after finishing his glass of water, David stepped onto his small back porch. The sun was still low, filtered through the trees, but it felt warm and calming. He sat quietly with his hands on his knees and listened to the early sounds of the day. Birds, the occasional car, the breeze against the fence. After 10 minutes, he returned inside not just more awake, but more present. After a week, he realized he was falling asleep faster at night. He was waking less during the early hours. He no longer needed to drag himself from bed. Instead of grogginess, he felt an alert stillness. The change, though gentle, was profound. His friend Benjamin, a retired piano teacher, had been battling chronic insomnia for years. He had tried melatonin, warm milk, even ambient music, but nothing lasted. David urged him to try the light habit. Just 10 minutes outside within half an hour of waking. Benjamin was skeptical, but open. 2 weeks later, he called David in awe. "I slept through the night," he said. "For the first time in 10 years. The science confirmed it. Early light boosts morning cortisol levels naturally, helping the body feel alert. Later in the day, it encourages a stronger melatonin release, improving sleep quality. Even on overcast days, outdoor light is far more powerful than indoor bulbs." Now, David rarely misses a morning. Rain or shine, he steps outside, sometimes with a light jacket, always with quiet intention. It's not about the weather, he tells people. It's about letting your body know the day has begun. And in that light, soft, ordinary, yet extraordinary, he finds something both grounding and life-giving. Before David embraced a new morning rhythm, his body often felt stiff and sluggish when he woke up. he chalked it up to aging, just another inevitability. But as his morning water and sunlight habits settled into place, he began to wonder what else he might be overlooking. One morning, as he stood on his porch letting the sunlight warm his face, he shifted slightly and noticed the familiar ache in his knees. It wasn't painful exactly, but it was limiting. Bending down to pick up the newspaper or reaching for something on a low shelf had become increasingly awkward. That's when he remembered Eleanor's words. Gentle movement in the morning is not about fitness, it's about lubrication. Curious, he looked into it. The body, it turns out, is like a machine that idles overnight. Without movement, joints remain stiff, circulation is sluggish, and inflammation quietly builds. Even a few minutes of slow, intentional motion could activate autophagy, a natural cleaning process that clears out damaged cells and supports joint health. So David tried something new. After drinking his water and stepping outside, he added 5 minutes of movement, shoulder rolls, neck stretches, ankle circles. He gently bent forward, swayed side to side, and rotated his hips. There was no rush, no goal, just motion. At first, he felt clumsy, even a little self-conscious. But within a week, something shifted. His knees began to ache less. His back didn't complain when he stood up, and tying his shoes felt easier. He thought of his neighbor Harriet, a once vibrant woman now facing knee replacement surgery. She had always been active, but arthritis had slowed her. When David shared his new habit, she listened politely but skeptically. Still, she decided to try. Each morning before breakfast, she moved gently. Circles, sways, stretches. Within a month, her pain lessened. 3 months later, her doctor postponed the surgery. "I feel like I got part of my life back," she told David, eyes shining. The beauty of morning movement, David realized, wasn't in its intensity, but its consistency. It wasn't about burning calories. It was about giving the body a signal. I'm awake, I'm ready, I'm here. Now, it was as much a part of his morning as brushing his teeth. He often tells others, especially those who say, "I'm too old to start," that the opposite is true. You move, he says, so you can keep moving. And each gentle motion becomes not just exercise, but a quiet promise to his future self. It was during a chilly autumn morning, while sitting quietly on his porch, that David first paid attention to his own breath. Not just the fact that he was breathing. Of course, he was. But how? His breaths were shallow, rushed, barely filling his lungs. Despite the peaceful setting, his body seemed to be bracing for a day that hadn't even begun. It struck him then how little he'd ever thought about breathing as a tool, something he could guide and shape. He remembered Eleanor mentioning a practice called 4-7-8 breathing, a simple method that, according to her, could reset the nervous system and help the body shift from stress to balance. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he decided to try. Sitting upright, hands resting gently on his lap, he inhaled through his nose for 4 seconds, held it for 7, then exhaled slowly through his mouth for 8 seconds. The first round felt awkward, unfamiliar. But by the third breath, he noticed his shoulders drop and his jaw unclench. He repeated the cycle 4 times, no more. It took less than a minute, but it left a trace, like a soft note that lingered. Even after the music stopped, David began practicing it each morning, right after his stretches. It became a transition, a moment between quiet and activity, between rest and engagement. With time, he noticed subtle changes. His heart rate felt steadier, his mind clearer. He no longer started the day in a low hum of tension. Instead, he entered it with composure. When his longtime friend Robert, shared that he had been feeling anxious in the mornings, tight chest, racing thoughts. David offered the technique. "Don't expect fireworks," he said gently. "Just give your body a different message." Robert was skeptical but curious. 2 weeks later, he called, astonished. "I didn't realize how wired I was every morning until I finally slowed down." What David came to understand was that breathing is more than survival. It's communication. The body listens. It takes its cues from how we breathe. Shallow, quick breaths send signals of danger. Deep, intentional breaths tell the system, "You're safe now." And from that safety, healing begins. Now, whether cloudy or bright, David's mornings always include those 30 seconds of breath. He no longer sees them as optional. They are a quiet ritual, a way of saying to himself, "I am here, I am calm, I am ready." Not with force, but with grace. And sometimes, grace is all we need to age well. By the time David reached the kitchen each morning, he had already hydrated, welcomed the morning light, moved gently, and taken several deep, intentional breaths. His body felt more alive now, more receptive, but there was still one vital part of the puzzle left to complete: breakfast. For most of his adult life, breakfast had been an afterthought. A slice of toast, maybe a muffin, often paired with black coffee. He rarely felt hungry in the early hours and didn't give much thought to what his body actually needed. That changed after a quiet conversation with his new physician, Dr. Patel. She gently explained that breakfast wasn't just about energy, it was about metabolic direction. "The first food you put into your body," she said, "tells your system how to function for the rest of the day. It's like setting a thermostat." High sugar and refined carbs, she warned, sent the body into a cycle of insulin spikes and crashes. Protein and fiber, on the other hand, provided steady energy and supported cellular repair. David listened, and he changed. Now, his breakfast often included soft-boiled eggs, a scoop of Greek yogurt with chia seeds, or a warm bowl of oatmeal with berries and walnuts. He noticed his energy held strong well into the afternoon, without the crash that used to send him napping on the couch. Around this time, he reconnected with Gerald, an old colleague who had recently been diagnosed with prediabetes. They met for coffee one morning, and Gerald confided in him. "I don't get it," he said. "I'm not overweight. I walk almost every day. And still, my numbers are climbing." David nodded thoughtfully, then shared his new breakfast routine. Gerald was hesitant. He loved his toast, his sweet cereals. But with time and some experimenting, he made the switch. 6 months later, his blood markers had normalized. "I didn't believe it would make such a difference," he admitted. "But it's the only thing I changed." Yet nourishment wasn't just about food. David had learned that connection fed the body too. One morning, as he stood in line at the bakery, he struck up a short conversation with the young woman behind the counter. It lasted less than a minute, but her warm smile stayed with him all day. Studies supported what David felt instinctively. Even brief, meaningful social interactions in the morning could reduce inflammation, support heart health, and lift mood. Now, he makes it a point to greet his neighbors or call a friend as he sips his tea. Morning food for the body and food for the soul. Together, they've become his quiet foundation for the day ahead. David never considered himself a spiritual man. He believed in kindness, in honesty, in taking care of what you're given. But prayer and rituals were foreign to him. That changed slowly, almost imperceptibly, as his mornings took on new shape, with water, light, movement, breath, nourishment, and connection, something deeper began to stir. A quiet sense of presence. One morning, after his tea and a cheerful phone call with his sister, he sat down and, without knowing why, placed a hand over his heart. He breathed deeply, then whispered to himself, "Thank you." The words surprised him, not directed at anyone in particular, just a simple offering. He paused and added, "Thank you, legs, for carrying me all these years. Thank you, eyes, for letting me see the faces I love. Thank you, heart, for showing up every day, without asking for praise." The moment felt tender and powerful. From that day forward, David included this practice of gratitude at the close of his morning routine. Not a vague list of blessings, but a specific acknowledgement of his body, its struggles, its endurance, its quiet service. He didn't do it out of obligation. He did it because it grounded him, shifted his focus from what hurt to what still worked. It reminded him, gently, that aging wasn't just a process of loss. It was also a record of loyalty. His body had never given up on him, even when he had doubted it. When Patricia, a neighbor and longtime friend, confessed that she had been feeling disconnected from herself, frustrated with her blood pressure, tired of feeling old, David invited her to try his morning gratitude ritual. At first, she laughed. "What's that going to fix?" she asked. But the next time they met, she told him she'd tried. "It felt strange," she said, "but afterward, I cried. Not out of sadness, just release." 3 months later, her cardiologist noted improvements in her heart rate variability and blood pressure. She hadn't changed medication. She had simply changed her inner narrative. Now, every morning, David places his hand on his chest, closes his eyes, and offers thanks. It takes less than 2 minutes. And yet, he believes those are the most important 2 minutes of his day. He no longer thinks of aging as decline, but as dialogue, a quiet conversation between his past and his present, his body and his spirit. And in those moments of gratitude, he feels whole. His mornings are not routines anymore. They are rituals, not of perfection, but of presence. And that, perhaps, is the truest secret to living well into life's final chapters.